right, we're going to do unlock the problem on page 611. Using a map, Alex estimates the distance between his house and his grandparents' house to be about 15,000 meters. About how many kilometers away from his grandparents' house does Alex live? So I know I have 15,000 meters, but they're asking me to change it to kilometers or kilometers. So I'm going from meters to kilometers. So I'm going to use my chart right here. I'm going to figure out here's my meters, here's my kilometers. I'm going from something smaller to bigger, smaller to bigger. I am going to divide. Now what am I going to divide by? Count your hops. 1, 2, 3. 3 hops equals 1,000. So I have 15,000 meters. I know I'm going to divide it by 1,000 because it's 3 powers of 10 smaller. So that's how I got my 1,000. And so here's step 1 and 2 for you. Meters are 3 powers of 10 smaller than kilometers. There are 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer. Determine the operation to be used. We figured since we're going from smaller to larger, we're going to divide. Step 3, we have 15,000. We're dividing it by 1,000, and that gives us 15. So his house is 15 kilometers from his grandparents' house. Okay, make sure you wrote this in your math book. Now let's try another problem together. Jamie made a bracelet. It's 1 8/10 decimeters long. How many millimeters long is Jamie's bracelet? So I have to go from decimeters, and they want me to convert it to millimeters. So here's my deci, and here's my milli. I'm going from something bigger to something smaller, so I am going to multiply. What am I going to multiply by? Let's count our hops. 1, 2. 2 hops is 100. So let's take this. I have 1.8, 1 8/10. I'm multiplying it by 100 because it was 2 hops away. So when you do this type of problem, there's a couple different ways that you can do it. You can multiply 100 times 1.8 out. Or if you stop to think about our decimal chapters that we did in the beginning of the year, I don't need to do all this work. I can do it right in my head. I know that I'm multiplying by a power of 10. That power of 10 is 100. Since there's 2 zeros in 100, I'm going to move my decimal point 2 spots. Okay? How do I know which way to go? Am I going to move to the right or am I going to move to the left? Well, I know I'm multiplying, so my answer is always going to get bigger. So I have 1.8. I'm moving it 2 hops to make it bigger. So there's 1, 2. There's nothing here, so I'm going to add a 0, and my decimal point is now at the end. So 1.8 decimeters now equals 180 millimeters. So let's do a quick review. If I had 1.8 and I multiplied it by 10, that power of 10 is telling me to move it only 1 hop. So that would then become 18. If I had 1.8 and I multiplied it by 1,000, this power of 10 has 3 zeros, so I have to move this decimal 3 times. 1, 2, 3. So that would become 18,000. Okay? So remember, anytime we multiply, our decimal point moves to the right. If we're dividing, it would be moving to the left to make it smaller. Okay. All right, let's look at our other examples on the bottom that says, try this. We need to convert 247 milligrams to centigrams, decigrams, and grams. Okay. So I'm going from milligrams to centa to deci to actual just grams. So here's my chart. I'm going from milli to centa to deci to just grams. So I'm going from something smaller to something bigger. So I am going to be dividing. I'm going to divide from here to here, from milli to deci, and I'm going to divide from milli to grams up here. Okay. So here this is. I've started to write it out for you. 247 milligrams equals how many centigrams? We figured milligrams to centigrams is 1 hop, so I am dividing it by 10. I didn't have a decimal point So I put a decimal point right here at the end. So anytime you see a number like this, your decimal point goes right here at the end. So I'm dividing by 10. My power of 10 is telling me I'm going to move it one hop. But I'm dividing it, so that means my answer has to get smaller. So I move the decimal hop one spot to make 247 smaller. So it becomes 24 and 7/10 centigrams. Okay, let's try the next one. I have 247 milligrams, and now I have to go to decigrams. So that is milligrams to decigrams. 1, 2, 2 hops. So I'm going to divide this one by 100. Okay, I want to do mental math. My power of 10 is 2 zeros, and I'm moving it 2 times. 1, 2. So it now becomes 2 and 47 hundredths as your answer. Last one, I have 247, and I'm dividing it by 1,000. How did I get 1,000? Well, let's see. I'm going from milligrams to just grams. That's 1, 2, 3 hops. So that's how I got 1,000. Okay, once again, I want to do this all mentally. I have 3 zeros, so I'm going to move my decimal point up. It's not here. It's going to be put right at the end, 3 times smaller, because anytime I divide, my answers always get smaller. 1, 2, 3. So it now becomes 247 thousandths with the THS at the end. Here's a little trick. If you're going to figure out how do you move your decimal point. So since I went from milligrams to grams, I'm going from the right to the left. So I'm going to move my decimal point in this direction. For the problem before, we went from decimeters to millimeters. So if my decimal point was here, I have to then move it 2 hops to the right because I went 1, 2. So whatever direction you move on your chart is the direction you will move your decimal point in your answer. Okay, let's do one last problem, part B. We have 3 and 9 hectoliters. We have to change our hectoliters to decaliters, liters, and deciliters. So once again, I rewrote this out for us. So I'm going from hectoliters to deciliters. All right, my chart. Always use your chart. Here is my hectoliters. Hectoliters is over here. And I now need to go to deciliters. Bigger to smaller. So I'm going to be multiplying. And that is only how many hops? 1 hop. So I'm going to be multiplying by 10. So I have 3.9 times 10. Going to do this all in my head. Since I went from here to here, I'm going to move my decimal point to the right. And I'm going to move my decimal point to the right, so it now becomes 39. So now I have 3.9 hectoliters, and I'm going to go to liters. So hectoliters to liters. How many hops is that? 1, 2, and I'm going to move my decimal in the same direction that I want on my chart. So here's 3.9 times 100 because I moved 2 hops. I'm going to move it 2 hops in the same direction. So it becomes 390. 1, 2, 390 is now my answer for that. Last one, I have 3 and 9 hectoliters, and I now need to go to deciliters. Back to my chart, hectoliters all the way to deciliters. Bigger to smaller, multiply by how many hops? 1, 2, 3. Since I moved it 3 hops, I am multiplying it by 10, so I'm going to move my decimal 3 hops to the right. Okay, so here's 3.9 times 1,000, and I'm going to move my decimal point 3 hops. 1, 2, 3 to the right. So it now becomes 3,900.